Hello, Lions. This is going to be. Hold on, I'm in the wrong spot. Okay. So this is going to be for Miss Erickson's classes in particular, but if Mr. Cotret or Miss Pritchard's classes want to use this, they can. So, how do we write a research question? So, in an effort to assist you, I have put together a little resource here in your Canvas. So this is going to help you write a research question. So we talked a little bit when y'all were in the library about researchable questions. So writing a research question isn't just as simple as like thinking of a question about your topic and then going and researching it, okay? So a good research question is not a yes or no question. So it is a question that requires more than yes or no as an answer. It is researchable in that there has to be enough information in existence that addresses the question. So while you may have like a little bit of knowledge about your topic, if you don't have enough knowledge about what sort of information is out there about your topic and you're just making up questions without really knowing what there is about your topic out there, then you're going to come up with a research question that's not researchable. Another problem with, or a good research question also can't be too narrow so that it's impossible to find information on it. If you put together a research question because you haven't done enough research on the actual topic to know enough about it, and you make this question impossibly narrow, there may not be any information about it because you've created a question in which is not answerable through research. And then the other issue on the other end of that is that it's too broad. You've made the question so broad that there's just too much information and there's no possible way for you to research it because the question is just too broad. So, um, what is the best way to come up with a research question? The best way to come up with a research question is to start by thinking of informal questions. So, these are questions that you are going to have to do some reading on your topic, which is why you've already read the overviews of your topic. Hopefully, if not, you may want to go back and carefully read that overview because you're going to develop informal questions. So, for instance, if my topic is food waste, if I have chosen this as my topic, and I have read this overview article, I'm going to understand information about food waste, that it's edible food that's not consumed, that it's been discarded by retailers or consumers. I'm going to know about what food loss is, that it's the decreased quantity or quality of food that occurs between harvest and sale and accounts for a remainder of food waste in the US. So I'm going to go through this article and I'm going to understand all of these things. I'm going to look at these main ideas about food waste and make sure that I understand what these main ideas are. And then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to read about causes. What causes food waste? I may think, oh, well, food waste is too many people throwing food away. Well, obviously. But what are the specific causes of food waste as identified in this issue? And then what are some of the effects of food waste? I'm going to need to know about that. And then I'm going to need to know about what are the current things that are in place to help prevent food waste at federal, state, and even a local level. Municipal means local. So once I go through this overview, I should be able to answer basic questions like what constitutes food waste? What is food waste? Or how does food waste impact the environment? How much food is wasted in the United States? What are the most prominent sources of food waste? In what stages in the food supply chain does food waste occur? What happens to recovered and recycled food? How do individual households handle food waste? How do restaurants and grocery stores handle food waste? All of this information was in that basic overview article, but I should be able to answer all these very basic questions. And by being able to answer these very basic questions, I'm now able to create or formulate a more complex question that is actually researchable. All of these questions are researchable, but they're very easily answered. And there's not necessarily a viewpoint associated with these that makes food waste an issue. All of these questions simply address the issue of food waste and help me as the person who's using this issue to formulate a research question understand the basics of this issue. So form a formal research question. So um, So your informal questions, these questions are questions you might have about your topic and you find out by basic reading. These questions are not necessarily questions that you would use in a formal research question because they're easily answered and part of the general issue. Noting your informal questions as you begin your research will help you formulate a researchable question in the next step. So, I suggest that you do sort of gather these questions and put them down and then be able to answer them because once you can sort of do that basic thing, then you're able to formulate a more formal research question. So, after doing some general reading and assembling a basic understanding of your issue and the viewpoints associated with your issue, now you can begin to think about and formulate your formal research question. Be prepared to revise your question multiple times. Revision indicates that you are on the right track to formulating a quality question. So, a basic but ultimately poor formal research question on food waste would be: do people waste too much food? So, this question is not a good formal research question because it's incredibly subjective. It's essentially an opinion that someone has turned into a question. So, the opinion is that people do waste too much food and there is food waste, right? We know this because it wouldn't be an issue in the database if it wasn't something that was happening. So, this is not a good research question because it's essentially the opinion that people do waste too much food, but it was turned into a question. So you want to avoid thinking of other like opinions about your issue and then just turning them into a question. You want to avoid doing that. It's also so broad that there's going to be tons of information that will provide evidence that yes, people do waste a lot of food. So you're going to have entirely too many sources that address that question, and you're not really. I mean, it's not really a researchable question. I mean, it is a researchable question, but it's not a good one. Um, so, a better question would be framed as: in the United States, how does household food waste contribute to climate change? So, this question has a region of focus. We're focused on the United States. If your issue is global, you might say something like, across the globe, or if it's, pertains to certain, or you might have a certain country or certain area like Asia or something like that, where you are concentrating your question. You don't have to have a focus like that, but it is probably going to be helpful in regards to research. So this is also a good question because it shows an understanding of the topic of food waste by incorporating the issue of climate change. So if you click on this link, it's going to take you to an article about climate change, but I defined it here for you just so you could see. So scientists define climate change as a significant persistent variation in either the mean state or the climate, or its variability due to natural or anthropogenic clearly I don't know what that word is, causes. Anthropogenic climate change refers to a change in the Earth's climate in excess or natural climate variability that is attributed directly or indirectly to human induced changes in the atmosphere's composition. And it goes on to talk about methane gas being one of the things that contributes to climate change. Well, one of the things that we know about food waste is that it creates methane gas. Food in landfills, and when we have compost heaps and things like that, those when food deteriorates, it creates methane gas. Well, methane is one of the contributors to climate change. So by associating what happens to food waste when it decomposes to a global issue affecting the environment, I've now tied this issue to something that I can actually research, right? It's also narrow enough that the researcher can focus on sources about food waste and climate change, but broad enough that there will be sources that cover this issue under the umbrella of the food waste issue. So in Mackinvia, if I were, let me go to your group. I was doing something else there. So if I want to go to opposing viewpoints, because again, I want to focus on the United States if possible, since that's my research question. If I go to browse issues, and I go to the food waste issue that's been updated. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Um, these are going to be the sources that I can use. But in addition to that, if I wanted to come and I could, start looking through those sources to see if there are sources, but I can also come to the advanced search here and I can go food waste. And then I can also put in here climate change. So when I do that, now I can tell this is a researchable. So this is one of the things you can do in your revision. You can search some of the terms that you put in your question together, not tons of terms. You'll notice I had two phrases that I put in my research question, and then I put those in an advanced search in the same system. And so you'll notice there's three viewpoints on both that talk about both food waste and climate change. There's 57 news articles, there's 5 videos, there's 5 academic journals, there's an audio, there's a website, and there's 2 magazines. So I would definitely be able to find at least 4 sources for this assignment that I could use on this question. Okay. Surely in all of these sources right here, and plus it's a smaller amount of sources. So my research question is researchable, but it also I can tell now that I've written it that there is information about it. So it's not too broad and it's not too narrow, but it is something that is researchable. Okay, so that's something you can do in the revision state. If you take a couple of the terms, like, and your overall issue, like my issue is food waste, it should be in your question. That part, that should be in your question. So then you should have at least one other term that's going to help you research your question that way. Okay, so these would be my two sort of search terms: food waste and climate change, right? And then I could even use the United States, but I think I can look at articles and determine that, right? So once you have a good researchable question, you're going to show Miss Erickson your researchable question, and then you're going to also determine your viewpoints. You need to do your viewpoints before you show her the question too. So the viewpoints you initially identified in your issue selection that you did in the library with me on your form, these viewpoints, they may align with your formal research question. That's entirely possible, but they may not align, and that's okay. It's okay for you to, once you know a little bit more about your topic, your issue, and you develop and you know, sort of come up with your informal questions and you're able to answer those successfully, and you develop your formal research question, it's okay for you to evaluate viewpoints in association with that question, and we want you to do that. So you should determine two opposing viewpoints for your issue that relate to your research question. So to my research question in the United States, how does food waste contribute to climate change? I've come up with two viewpoints. Household food waste has minimal to no effect on climate change. So that is one viewpoint, right? Another viewpoint is household food waste has a great effect, I should say, on climate change and should be reduced where possible. Okay. So I have two viewpoints now that I should be able to research. Now, as I'm going through my research, if I can't find information that supports both of these viewpoints, then those are probably not valid viewpoints and I need to revise them, right? But that's something that you can do along the way as well. You can revise your viewpoints and your research question along the way as necessary. Just because this is what you show to your teacher initially doesn't mean that those viewpoints and that question have to be the thing that you do forever. So, what you can do is click on this document right here, and you can make a copy of it. You don't have to use this document. Miss Erickson or Miss Pritchard or Mr. Cottrett may ask you to to use it, they may not. But this is something that can help you come to your research question. So just like I came up with all those informal questions, you can do that here. If you want to come up with more than 4, you can just insert. I just right clicked and you can insert a row above or below into this table and add more questions. If you only come up with 2 viewpoints, you can delete these other rows or you can add more rows if there's more, it's fine. And then here's where you can start practicing your research question and typing it in, and then change it as necessary. Same thing with your viewpoints. Change your question, change your viewpoints as necessary to make sure that you are choosing researchable things. So this document is made, I made it just to help you come up with a research question if you're having trouble doing that. Okay. Good luck, Lions, and let me know if there's anything I can help you with when it comes to writing your research question.